Hi, good morning, everyone, and I trust everyone is well on this what seems to be a winter morning, and we're obviously entering the winter time now. So maybe before we kickstart, if everybody can just from their side, just on the chat function, just give a quick indication where you're from in South Africa. That will just help as well, just to see where most of the attendees are coming from. In the meantime, as Ashley mentioned, I'm not gonna waste your time with a lot of theory and a lot of information that pertains to business planning. The focus here today is to give you practical advice that you can use if you ever go into a situation where you need to write your own business plan, or you as a team needs to write a business plan for various purposes. The idea today is to give you some advice as to how to practically accomplish that. And very important as well is to look at the pitfalls that, especially in the South African environment, you need to be wary of. So without further ado, let's kickstart the process. So as Ashley mentioned, I'm the founder of JTB Consulting. We specialize primarily in business planning and strategic planning. In addition to that, we work on preparing financial models and company valuations and so forth, to both startups as well as existing companies in Southern Africa, but also as far afield as Europe, the US, Australia, etc., across various industries. The focus initially when I started the company was to bring an affordable service and a world-class service to startups, especially startups that at the end of the day have very limited cash available to spend on consultants and external advice. And the company subsequently, over the past 2 decades, morphed and developed into a company that gives a full scope of startup advisory and consulting services to clients in South Africa and abroad. All right. So Benjamin Franklin said in the 1700s that nothing in the world is as important as death and taxes. Now, when we speak to startups and companies, the biggest question they normally ask is, do we really need a business plan? Now, in South Africa, if you need to use, or you want to use, a business plan for funding application purposes, the answer is a straightforward yes. You need a business plan, especially when it comes to funding, formalized funding institutions like government institutions, the IDC, NEF, but also non-governmental institutions, and then also venture capitalists, private investors, etc., would want a form of a business plan. Now, most of the investors or funding institutions are very particular in what they want to see. So they've got a very strict overview and outline as to what they want to see in a business plan. And they expect whoever applies for funding need to adhere to that. So for argument's sake, the IDC, as an example, very focused on the operational side of things. In terms of the finances, they want to see exactly your understanding of your projections, and also the viability of the business. They need to understand your overall understanding of the viability of your business, whether it's a product or a service-oriented business. So startups and existing businesses that we deal with normally ask this question: do I need a business plan, and is it really the best use of my time? Now, notwithstanding the information that I've just given, or the examples I've given now, as a rule, the answer is almost always yes. Unless you're in a fortunate situation where you've got family money, or you've got friends that want to invest in your company and they don't want a business plan for you, or they just, they trust you so much they don't even want to see what they invest in South Africa especially, the answer is always yes. And as we will see a bit later now, A business plan is not just beneficial if you want to apply for funding. There's so many other information that the business plan can be of benefit to you as a startup or an existing company, of which funding application is one of it. So I would then argue, if we look at the quote from Benjamin Franklin, I would then argue that in South Africa, nothing is as important as death, taxes, and a well-written business plan. And lately, in the last couple of months, also overcoming load shedding stage 6, very, very important in South Africa. Right. Good. Welcome, everyone. Before we carry on, welcome Midrand, Centurion, Polokwane, welcome. It's good to see everyone. Welcome. Hope everybody's keeping warm. Cape Town, Durban, Lito, nice. Pretoria. All right. Okay, so in terms of business planning and the why behind it. So the first and foremost reason for a business plan in South African environment is to apply for funding. So what you'll find is that you want to start a company, or you have an existing company and you need funding to either expand or to set up the company. So now, if you go to any of the funders, and especially if it's larger amounts, anything R1 million up, if you go to a funder, they are going to want to see some sort of business plan presentation. Now, if it's the local banks, they're very straightforward in terms of what they want to see. They want to look at your understanding of the business. They want to see your projections for the next 3 years or so, and some sort of research to underpin the actual projections that you've made. So your overall understanding as an entrepreneur. As I mentioned earlier, if you go to venture capitalists or the NEF or DTI, for argument's sake, they invest in very specific sectors of the market. And for argument's sake, if we look at marketing, manufacturing and construction type of businesses, it's very complex type of businesses. So they would want to see very specific information as to the type of business that you want to start, focusing on things like your production plan, your staff, etc. Apart from funding, and this is where it becomes very interesting, a lot of people in Southern Africa that we've dealt with normally approach a business plan consultancy, and they want a business plan, and they literally just want that document to apply for funding. And then what happens afterwards is that business plan is either thrown away or in the proverbial file 13 and never to be looked at again. So what we normally suggest to our clients when we go through the entire process is to really, at the end of the day, use that much more as a strategic plan, like most larger companies would do, on an annual or 5-year period, where they've got a very detailed strategic plan for their long-term goals. And the business plan can serve exactly that same purpose as well. It will help you to go back to the drawing board and say, okay, well, when we did the business plan 6 months ago, we made the following assumptions, and are these assumptions still true? That we managed to achieve what we wanted to set out to achieve, that we actually exceed our expectations, etc., etc. If you go through the entire process of business planning, in other words, the market research, identifying your market, the various competitors, etc., you will very quickly also see that if you're honest with yourself, that you can also identify your own potential weaknesses. And I'm talking here in much more broader sense of just your normal SWOT analysis. If I talk about weaknesses here, I'm talking about any situations that would prevent you from successfully implementing the strategy that you have in the business plan. That's the one thing. Also, what normally would fall under the weaknesses component would be risks associated with you successfully implementing the business. Now, remember, these type of risks can be anything from obvious risks like load shedding that would impact your business, right through to other much more broader type of internal risks like the depth of your management team and experience. Maybe you find it difficult to recruit certain staff because of the type of experience you require. etc., etc. And as you go through this business planning process with open eyes and a very critical approach, you will then very, very quickly be in a position where you can also start focusing on those weaknesses. And what is very important when it comes especially to funders and stakeholders in presenting your business plan is to never go in with an attitude to say, well, we don't really have weaknesses, or, you know, there are risks, but it's not really an issue to us. What funders and stakeholders want to see is, firstly, your in-depth understanding and appreciation of the weaknesses that you might have as a company, your understanding of the risks, but then also your ability to come up with a potential mitigation strategy, i.e., we know there's load shedding, for argument's sake, that will impact our business. We are going to do A, B, and C. And that will add a lot of more credibility to you as an applicant or as a business when it comes especially to funding application, but also if you want to maybe go into business with certain suppliers or certain stakeholders or certain partners. They all would want to see your ability to really focus on the realities of the market. Like I just mentioned, now going into the actual various stakeholders, it's not just funders. A business plan can be used for joint venture agreements. You might want to bring in a product from abroad where you want to become the exclusive distributor in South Africa. Chances are 99% of the time is that company abroad would want you to present them with some sort of business plan where they can understand the market and your ability to execute. So there's various stakeholders that would actually benefit and actually require you to present them with a business plan. Very important as well, tying into the previous component that speaks to the weaknesses, is the business plan should be a reality check for you. So at the end of the day, when you sit with that final document, you want to be as honest with yourself as possible and say, listen, we've gone through the research, we've spoken to various potential clients, we've spoken to suppliers, we've got a great idea, great product or great service, but you know what? Maybe now is not a good time to maybe start the business due to various reasons. Or you may find that that your thoughts of how easy would be, or how quick you would be able to actually enter the market might, after your research, you'll see, well, maybe I'm not going to be able to bring this mobile app of mine to the market within 3 months because the mobile app developer is going to take 12 months to get to a stage where I have something in hand. So also remember, when it comes to the funding application side of things, gone are the days when you submit your business plan and within 3 or 4 days you get your money. When it comes to government funders, for argument's sake, very important, some of them can take up to a year, depending how complex your actual business is. They can take up to a year, if not more, to actually evaluate your business and get to the stage where there's a formal due diligence done. And they actually say, okay, yes, you know what, we want to invest in you. Let's now talk about the money and the terms behind that funding itself. Very important in your business plan as well, once you've now done your research and once you've had the ability now to look at both the positives and the negatives of the market, you will normally be required by funders and stakeholders to have some sort of an action plan, or in industry they sometimes call it a milestones table, where you now know exactly what routes and what path you need to take to bring this business plan dream of yours, or the strategy that you've indicated in the business plan, to bring this to fruition. And that action plan would start from anything from the beginning of your actual business endeavors. In other words, you need to do a business plan, you need to apply for funding, you need to develop a certain component of the service, recruitment. If you still want offices, get offices, sign a lease agreement, etc. So basically, a full-blown action plan from the first step of starting the business right through to you actually opening the door for your first customer, or if you're in an online business, getting the first sale from your online store, for argument's sake. So very important, that action plan also as a rule, we suggest to our clients that the action plan forms a part of your business plan, because once again, whoever reads it will immediately see that you have credibility and you have thought of the entire process of how you're going to implement the strategy of yours. So once again, it's very important at the end of the day, whatever you put in front of a funder or a supplier or a potential partner, it all boils down to your credibility. You need to be seen as a credible entrepreneur, a credible business, and not just come in there with all guns blazing and making promises that you unfortunately can't keep. And a final component in terms of why it's important is, as you go through the process of business planning and doing your research and crunching in the numbers, you might find that you get new ideas. You may speak to potential customers, and after questioning them, they give you some ideas as to how you can maybe improve on your product or improve on your idea. So my suggestion would be is to never go in where you're just so set in your ways. I only want to do this, and it's only going to be this way. Listen to what the market's saying, because at the end of the day, you might have a beautiful product, but the market doesn't want it. Or you might have a great service, but the market is not ready for it. Once you're on a grassroots levels and you start speaking to the various stakeholders, including potential customers, they will very, very quickly give you an idea as to, yes, you've got a great idea or service or product here, or you know what, it's not the right time. And then once you get to that stage and maybe it proves that it's not the right idea or the right time, you go back to the drawing board and you start the process again and maybe explore alternatives or expand on the idea or totally go into a different direction. Now, in terms of advice, the advice I can give you based on what is happening in the market and what normally constitute a business plan that is rejected by funders and stakeholders, would initially start with somebody in the business plan, or the owner of the company or the startup or the partners being unable to in their narrative and in their explanation show that there's really a problem or really an opportunity. So now at the end of the day, what is very important, nobody will buy a service from you, nobody will buy a product from you, or nobody will support your business if you're not solving some sort of a problem, or you're not solving or not taking advantage of some sort of gap in the market. And it's very, very important in the initial pages already of your business plan is to get to a stage where you clearly and quickly identify the problem, so that whoever reads it can quickly see, listen, yes, okay, I haven't thought about it that way. Obviously, this person understands there is a problem. And then immediately, once you've identified the problem or the opportunities, is to immediately come to the table and say, okay, well, based on this problem we've identified, this is what we bring to the table as our solution, whether it's a product or a specific solution or a service. Very important, and this is normally where a lot of business plans are rejected, is it's much more of a document that is based on somebody's dreams and fiction as opposed to facts. And what you will find, doesn't matter who you speak to, whether it's a funder or a potential partner or a potential supplier, they would want you to justify 99.9% of the information in your business plan needs to be factually justifiable. And that's normally where it comes to the due diligence stage. So let's say you go to a funder, you apply for funding. In principle, the business plan seems great. And in principle, they are happy to invest in something like this. But now they get to the due diligence stage where they delve into the business plan and the claims that you've made much more deeper. And then they find out, well, you know what, these projections doesn't make sense, or you know what, this market size actually isn't as large as this person said. This is all fiction. These are all just pie in the sky dreams. And that's normally what then would happen. It hurts your credibility, and automatically your business plan is then thrown out or rejected. Another pitfall that we find, especially in the Southern African markets, I'm talking about the Botswana, Namibia, Lesotho markets as well, is that instead of having a focused business plan with a focused product or a focused solution, people come in and say, you know what, we are going to start a cleaning company. We're also going to do construction. And whilst we're busy with that, we're going to deliver, be a competitor to Uber as well. We're going to have an e-commerce store, etc., etc. And suddenly you're sitting with a business plan or a business idea that aims to operate in 4 or 5 or 6 very different and very unique markets. And you sit in front of a funder or a stakeholder asking you, okay, but now what are you actually doing? Where are you going to make money? Why are you trying to be everything to everyone? So once again, it brings it back to point number 1. What is the core problem or opportunity that you want to take advantage of? And what is your core solution or service that you would want to implement to address that problem or opportunity? And we've discussed that at length. Is business plan, obviously, along with your action plan, your milestones table, will show exactly to whoever reads this how you're going to get there, but also it will show you what your plans are of getting there. All right. So I wonder if I can pose a question on the chat function. Just quickly, let's take a minute. If I tell you this, one of the pitfalls of a business plan is the quickest way to get out of the room, get laughed out of the room by whoever reads it. What do you think the reason would be for that? Why would an investor or a potential funder or partner laugh you out of the room if there's a specific claim that you make in that business plan? Maybe you can just quickly, everybody respond on the chat function there. Everybody needs this product. Everybody needs this service. If you're promising exaggerated results, yes. Everyone is my customer, yes. No confidence, yes. Poor return on investment, thanks, Anele. Funders would laugh at poorly planned ideas, yes. No competition, well done. It's not practical, no data, I have no competitors. Yes, well done. Anthony, well done. Yes, not compelling, Beverly, 100%. Not well researched, yes, Dali, 100%. All right, so yes, I think a lot of that feedback is spot on. The biggest one, though, that Teboho and Anthony mentioned there is that I have no competitors. Now, as soon as somebody tells you I have no competitors, you should immediately, especially if you're the one that's asking for money, you should immediately, politely ask them to leave the room, and you're not going to think any further about investing in this business. Because if somebody comes into a discussion, and it doesn't matter what business it is, there is no such thing as not having any competitors, even if it's just an indirect competitor. And what I mean by indirect competitor, even if somebody's just offering a substitute product or a different product or service that's maybe not necessarily related to yours, but if a customer is in front of you, they have the option to choose that one as well. So never, ever, ever, and I can't hammer on this too much, never, ever make the statement that I have no competitors. As soon as you start going into the market, and especially if you think, or if you really have a very unique idea, and this is very specific to technology companies normally, or a decade ago where everybody said, you know what, I'm starting an Uber-like business, or I'm starting a Facebook-like business, because people saw Uber was successful and Facebook is successful and Google is successful. Now you come and you leverage that and say, well, I'm starting something similar. There will always be competitors in some form or another, and you need to get to an understanding yourself in terms of your research and in terms of your discussions with people out there, is who are these either direct or indirect competitors. All right. So I don't understand this gibberish. This refers to, very importantly, is to never use industry jargon or technical jargon that doesn't make sense. What startups and entrepreneurs need to understand is that when it comes to funders, especially, there's an initial gatekeeper. And that person, as the gatekeeper that initially evaluates your business plan, have a very broad understanding of the terms and so forth used in terms of a business plan. They've got a checklist and they want to see certain things in your business plan. Now, if you're a very technically orientated business or a business operating in manufacturing or mining, yes, of course, there will be a lot of technical information that you understand because you come from the industry. But now imagine you go to a funder, their understanding is primarily in the retail sector. Now you come with a very technical orientated business, and the first 2 pages is just full of technical information that nobody understands. They're going to take that business plan, they're going to throw it away. You might have an extremely viable business, an extremely profitable business, but you haven't given the opportunity for somebody to understand in layman's terms what it is that you want to bring to the market. So the rule of thumb is to always, when you do the business plan, and that's where the challenge comes in, is you want to dumb it down to layman's terms, but you don't want to dumb it down too much that it looks as if a first grader wrote the business plan. So there's a very huge challenge to potential startups and entrepreneurs in terms of doing their business plans. So the rule of thumb is, if you can't explain your entire business, in other words, how you're going to make money, what you're going to do, who's your customers, who's your competitors, and where are you going to be in the next 5 years? Now, those 5 or 6 components, if you can't explain it to the man on the street in less than a minute, then it's not good enough. You're going to have to be able to do that in that first 2 pages of your executive summary, so that you entice somebody so much with that reading that first page or 2 that they actually want to read it further. So just remember, steer away of technical jargon. When it comes to actually being invited to an investment meeting, or you need to go and present the business plan, then you can start clarifying the technical components when you speak to people, to whoever your audience is. But try and steer away from it as far as possible in the actual business plan. This is a risky business. So once again, one of the key sections that you need to have in your business plan, and I would say out of about 80% of the clients that we deal with, they always exclude this section, and that is a detailed risk analysis. And if we spoke about it a little bit earlier in terms of risks, more than just the fact that we have political risks or economic risks, or we've got load shedding risks and now water shedding risk, etc., very unique to South Africa. Each industry is unique. Each type of company is unique. And you need to literally go and sit down and ask yourself the question, what do I know is my top 10 risks? And out of those top 10 risks, if something had to happen, if any of those risks had to materialize, will my business be able to survive? That's the first question you need to ask. And secondly, if it does survive, will it be hurt? And will I be able to carry on with the business? So never forget your risk analysis, as well as, if the risk is identified, is how you're going to address that risk. What are you going to do to try and either eliminate or lessen the impact of that risk? And then, yes, some of the feedback on the chat functionality a little bit earlier is about financials. And one of the key issues that funders normally have comes to the financial projection side of things. So somebody has an Excel spreadsheet and they reckon, I'm starting the company today, I want R1 million, and by the end of next year, I'm going to be a R1 billion company. Now, this may sound laughable to a lot of people, but it happens on a daily basis. where excessive claims are made. I can tell you from experience, having done this with clients in the last 20 years, that it takes at least anything from 9 to 18 months for any business, unless you now have secured contracts and you've got a contract of 5 million and you've got guaranteed revenue for 5 million. Unless you're in that situation, it will take anything from 9 months to 18 months to get to a break-even point where you start showing a profit. And a funder wants to see that. They want to see you understand what happens in theory, or what you suggest in theory will never happen in practice, because there's so many factors that even if you've gone through the risk analysis and identifying your weaknesses, there's still so many factors that you can't plan for. And you need to plan for that when it comes to your funding application and your understanding of how you project the market. Another example would be where a financial model is done. We're sitting in an environment where it's basically impossible to increase your prices by 6 or 7% if you go to clients. Although we sit in an inflation environment where the food and everything every day is just becoming more expensive. So people would then do a financial model and they would say, no, I'm going to be able to do a 20 to 25% increase every year on my sales side, whereas my expenses are only going to grow by about 4 or 5%. That will never happen. And once again, in addition to the earlier comment made in terms of competitors, not having any competitors, this will be another very important reason why funders would laugh you out of the room, so to speak, and say, you know what, we can't take you serious when you come with these type of things. All right, so just a brief rundown in terms of general mistakes, without labeling all of them. We've discussed a lot of them already. What language is this? Very important. Keep it simple. Keep it straightforward business language, and as far as possible, keep it in layman's terms, whatever solution you are proposing or whatever components you are proposing. Another aspect as well is very important. Whatever claims you make in your financial model is to always have a write-up on the side that can clearly tell anybody reading the plan to say, listen, these are our sales prices. We've assumed A, B, and C. Or, this is our profit that we're going to make. We assumed the tax rate is A, and we assumed labor increases of B. So make sure that you give all that information as part of the business case. Very important as well is not to be repetitive. In other words, if you said it already, don't go and write the same thing again in another section, and another section, try and bring your point across. Be focused, be succinct, and whatever claims you make, ensure that there is factual representation or factual information that can underpin your claims. Spoke about that a little bit earlier. You don't want to dumb it down too much, because you don't want somebody to ask you the question, did a first grader write this business plan, or who wrote this business plan? It's obviously not you. Cash flow, we can spend hours and hours and hours on this point. Unfortunately, I would say 90% of the funders that we speak to have the same issue when it comes to the presentation of business plans, and that is a limited understanding of what cash and how cash works in the business, and the difference between profit and cash, and the difference between paying your suppliers within a week versus being able to pay your suppliers within a month. Working capital, so to speak. Cash is extremely important, and whenever you're going to present your business plan, you will find that a lot of the questions will revolve around cash, your availability of cash. Do you have enough cash to sustain you for that 9 to 18 months that you take to reach break-even point, etc., etc.? The section that speaks to you as entrepreneur, very important. So one of the key reasons why business plans are rejected as well is the limited ability of an entrepreneur or a business owner or a startup to convey their personal bio or their personal experience, and how they can leverage their personal experience or their team's experience to actually make a success of the business. Remember, at the end of the day, you can have all the nice products under the sun. You can have the best solution. The market is there. Customers want to buy. But if you don't have a team that's got the experience to implement and the team to actually execute, then that will be a very, very huge risk to potential funders and any other partners that you want to partner with. So just be wary when it comes to the presentation side of things. Be wary when it comes to making claims in terms of your own experience. Just make sure that you can back up any claims made in terms of how you are a strength, or your experience and your team's experience is a strength to the business. And then, especially in the environment that we're currently facing, even more so, the more riskier an environment becomes, the more funders and any other stakeholders want to see that you've actually made some progress. In other words, it becomes very difficult for startups to get funding in South Africa, because especially if you've got no experience, you haven't made any sales yet, you've got no purchase orders, etc., most funders won't take the risk on that. If you are in a position, though, to say, okay, let me try and do this business on the sideline whilst I'm still working, let me get some orders, let me get some work in, let me start making some sales, and then within 6 to 9 months after doing that, I can go with substantial proof to a funder and say, you know what, I need 2 or 3 million rand now to take it from a business that I'm selling 20 or 30,000 rand a month's worth of goods. Now I want to scale it and take it to the next level. You will be much more of a credible investor or investment than somebody going in there that hasn't done anything in terms of showing proof or traction. So that's very, very important. If you can fund it yourself for that time until such time as you've made a proof of concept, then my suggestion would be is to go that route. You're going to find it much easier to find funding with some proof that you've had some traction in the business. And then just without going into too much detail with all the components of a business plan, the components here is basically the structure that government funders, personal funders, and non-government institutions would want to see. The executive summary is normally the component that you would write the last, but basically it would focus on your company overview, the industry analysis, in other words, what is happening in the industry, what is happening in the market, how big is the industry, and what portion of that industry are you going to target. The customer analysis or your market analysis, and normally what we would suggest here is don't just say, listen, I'm going to open a coffee shop and my customers will be anybody that loves coffee. You can go a step further, and that's normally what funders want to see as well, is where you actually have a customer persona. So you can speak of, I've got 3 types of personas that would buy from me. I've got the workaholic that drives by our coffee shop every day on the way to work, and he pops in and he's going to get a coffee, and to him, coffee that's of a good quality is very important, and he's willing to pay a premium for that. That's a type of customer persona. Now you're putting a face and a type of characteristic and attitude and so forth to the customer market that you want to target. Another one might be is the romantic couple that want to go on a first date and drink some coffee at your coffee shop. That's another customer persona. So immediately what you do when you present the business plan is you're making it human-like, you're making it personal, and immediately somebody can identify with, you know, the professional worker or the workaholic or the mom and pop, for argument's sake. Competitor analysis, very important as well. Remember, it's not good enough to just say, you know what, my competitor is Pick n Pay, Spar, and ShopRite. You need to be in a position where you can explain to a funder or a stakeholder that these are my competitors, these are their key strengths, these are their key weaknesses, and based on those weaknesses, that's where I feel with my company, I'll be able to target customers and take customers away from them. I see the gap in their weaknesses. So you need to understand your competitors, even a step further. If you can understand their pricing, how they work, who they work with in terms of their suppliers, what do their customers say online? Are their customers happy with their service? Maybe you read some one-star Google reviews where customers complain about the frontline staff. Now immediately you know, okay, well, this company is obviously have an issue in terms of their frontline customer staff or customer-facing roles. You can do something better and steal clients away from them if you have a very friendly front-of-house staff, for argument's sake. Marketing plan, very important, and also refer to a go-to-markets. In other words, how are you going to now get your customers? How are you going to bring this service and this idea of yours? How are you going to bring this to the market? What channels are you going to use? And I mean, once again, it's no use just saying, yeah, I'm going to use Instagram and I'm going to use Facebook and maybe TikTok. You need to be very specific. You need to understand what is already out there. You need to understand and be able to convey what your competitors are doing. Are they using the platforms like Instagram, or are they using something totally different? The operational plan, this focus primarily on your internal operations. So if you're let's say, small manufacturer, or let's take the example again of the coffee shop, your internal operations, how do you work? What time do you open in the mornings and over weekends? Do you have a certain amount of waiters? Do you have qualified baristas? What do you do operationally? Do you clean the coffee machines once a week, once a month, etc., etc.? So those type of questions will be posed as well. Second to last, the management and HR, that obviously refers to your team, but very important as well. It's not just your management team, but your HR team. And what we found now with a lot of funders is they don't just want to see that you appointing certain categories of staff. They want to see that you actually include it in your business plan, that you will pay these staffs the industry average or the industry wage that is expected in South Africa. So if you go in there and say, no, I'm going to pay my barista 2,000 Rand, and the IDC knows the minimum wage is, let's say, 4,500, once again, it will hurt your credibility. So make sure that you do your research in terms of the salary scales, especially in your industry, which will differ from industry to industry, but also obviously from country to country. And then in conclusion, the financial model, very important. The financial model and the key components of your projections, you need to extract that from your projections and include that in your executive summary, because whoever reads the executive summary and not the entire business plan want to see immediately what your profit is, what your cash is, how quick you're going to reach break-even point, how long it will take before your cash runs out, etc., etc. But the backup itself should be your financial model that will include your three statements, your income statement, cash flow, balance sheet. And once again, rule of thumb, 5-year projections is more than adequate in the South African market, of which the first year needs to be at least a month-to-month projection. And then the subsequent years, 2 to 5, can be an annual projection. There are some instances, much more complex businesses like manufacturing and mining, and especially if you go the venture capitalist route where you want equity financing, where they're not going to just want a 5-year projection, they're going to want anything from 7 to 15 years. For example, if you go the route of you want to start a solar panel manufacturing company, or a solar installer, you're going to need to do anything from 15 to 20 years projections, because the time it takes to actually start making money is so much longer. And investors want to see that you have an understanding of that. Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.